Once again, everybody, major spoilers for Star Wars The Force Awakens in this video. There is your warning. It seems that if there is one thing people want to debate more than anything in regards to Star Wars The Force Awakens, it is speculation over who Rey's parents might be. Now, she obviously has to have parents, not to say that they're necessarily good parents, because, there's nothing that screams good parenting, quite like leaving your 5-year-old daughter on a barren desert planet in the hands of a junk parts dealer. I mean, those initial endearing words of, "Quiet, girl." You can just feel the love. Now, obviously, the most prevailing theory is that she is the daughter of Luke Skywalker, and while there is evidence to indicate that, there's also evidence to indicate a relation to other families as well. That, and I just feel like the notion of her being the daughter of Luke is just so unbelievably obvious. To the point where I can't imagine the storytellers would take pride in their work as storytellers to go with something that obvious. Not to mention that whole thing about Jedi not being allowed to love or marry, but then again, when has that ever complicated things for the Skywalker family? As things are, though, nobody but the people actually making these movies know for sure, and I don't think it's a mistake that there is ambiguity about Rey's family. I also wouldn't put it past the writers to have intentionally included things in Episode 7 to serve as misdirection amid all this inevitable speculation. What most of this boils down to is that for pretty much every theory people have that they believe to be so concrete regarding Rey's lineage, there is usually plenty that can detract from every argument, or at the very least, other arguments and theories that hold just as much weight. And while I admittedly was initially on board with the theory of Rey being related to Obi-Wan Kenobi somehow, the more I've looked into that, the less likely I see that being. And at this point, I don't think Rey is related to any family from the original trilogy, and I'm going to tell you why. While I already touched a tiny bit on potential scenarios of Rey's origins in a previous video, the more I've read and the more I've researched, the more I feel that the notion of Rey being related to any of the familiar Force-sensitive surnames in the Star Wars movies really would feel very shoehorned in there to try and score cheap nostalgia points. It would almost feel like prequel trilogy caliber writing, and it's an absolute must for every writer involved with this new trilogy to far exceed the level of quality that we endured through with the prequels. Along that same line with caliber of writing, if so many people already easily predicted something that's being built up the way Rey's origins are, then there's no big reveal or shocking plot twist that the writers pulled off. And it's for this reason that much of what's implied toward her origins in the movies, and even things that cast and crew say in interviews, has to be taken with a suspicion of serving as misdirection leading up to an eventual big reveal or plot twist. With that said, and with literally dozens of hours spent scavenging the internet, reading theories and gathering info, let's poke holes in all the arguments for Rey's relation to each family. Yes, Rey used a lunging attack style with her lightsaber that we've only seen previously done by Palpatine in Episode 3. And yes, it's possible that if Rey was a descendant of Palpatine somehow, that the Resistance may have feared having another powerful member of that family out there and stashed her on Jakku. But an attack style isn't exactly genetic, and to that same degree, if they believed that evil influence from the dark side was genetic enough to banish one person to obscurity, then Luke and Leia would have quite the target on them with the bad guys hanging around on their family tree. Yes, Obi-Wan's voice speaks directly to Rey 2 times during her vision when she touches the lightsaber. And yes, that same lightsaber was in Obi-Wan's possession for 19 years, which is a longer span of time than both Anakin and Luke combined possessed that lightsaber. She has a British accent like Obi-Wan, and there's the parallel of Rey sneaking around Starkiller Base, much like Obi-Wan did on the first Death Star. But Obi-Wan held strongly to the old Jedi Order, which included resisting feelings of love. We also don't know of any siblings he had if they were to go with the great uncle Obi-Wan route. As far as we know, he laid low in a small hut in the Tatooine desert for all of those 19 years after the fall of the Republic, from the time he left Tatooine with Luke Skywalker. And lastly, when you consider Obi-Wan's front row seat for how bad things went for Anakin when he took on a wife and had kids, it's tough to imagine Obi-Wan even slightly considering a wife at that point. Yes, she's repeatedly on the same page with Han, and yes, Leia seems to greet and embrace her unlike one would greet a total stranger. It's also suspicious how the Millennium Falcon ended up hanging out in the same small outpost where Rey gets her food rations. But Rey's British accent is different from each of Han, Leia, and Kylo Ren. Also, with losing their son to the dark side basically being established as what ripped Han and Leia apart, it seems very unlikely that they would just completely abandon their other child to live a life as a scavenger. In regards to the Falcon, Unker Plutt yells that it's his ship as Rey takes off with it, and seems angry that it's stolen. If it was placed there for Rey, he wouldn't have much room to be upset there. Not to mention that having a fast ship like that was advantageous to Han's life as a smuggler, and he seems to be in a bit of trouble without it. So it seems pretty unlikely he would just stash it in the desert on Jakku on the off chance that Rey might one day need a ship to escape, and happen to choose that one. Lastly, when Finn is stressing the need to save Rey when he first meets Leia, Leia isn't in much of a rush to get the ball rolling on that whole operation. If Rey was her daughter, she probably might make it a bit more of a priority. Yes, some kind of connection with the Skywalker lightsaber triggers Rey's Force vision. Rey is also a very good pilot and is naturally strong in the Force, learning very rapidly as both Anakin and Luke did during their younger years. R2-D2 also finally powers on once Rey arrives at the Resistance base, where he shows the rest of the map leading to an island within a vast ocean where Luke is, just like what Kylo Ren says he saw in Rey's head when he was peeking around in there. But that lightsaber, again, was in the possession of Obi-Wan for quite a bit longer than the Skywalkers ever had it. Also, wouldn't Han have known about Luke, his good friend and brother-in-law, having a child? If Luke did have a child and put that child into hiding, you'd think Han and Leia would be the safest bet of people to know who she was left with and where that hiding spot was. And from a simple parenting standpoint, why in the hell would Luke let his own child be abandoned at such a young age? Luke has plenty of connections and people who he could have sent her off with for a period of time. Abandoning her like that isn't exactly a positive quality that you'd expect from Luke. We also don't know just how uncommon it is for somebody to be so strong in the Force without much training. Sure, we've seen the Skywalkers do it, but there could be other families throughout the galaxy who are strong in the Force that we just have never seen prior to this. Just because Rey can learn it all quickly doesn't mean she has to be a Skywalker. Now again, nobody outside of the actual filmmakers know for sure, and I'd bet that they have something pretty clever up their sleeve with how they're going to deal with all of this, but I think they're also well aware of the shortcomings that the prequel trilogy had with trying to shoehorn in and tie in everything that fans were familiar with before into a new set of movies, and for the most part it just completely fell flat. So with all that said, please feel free to get creative in the comments with any alternative theories about Rey's family that you might have outside of that sort of inner circle of familiar family names that we know from the original trilogy. I have my own personal theory of who I think her parents are, but that's a different topic for a different video. If you like this video, please do the whole like and comment and subscribe thing, that whole song and dance from every YouTube video. And as always, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hey everybody, thank you again for checking out this video. If you want to check out the last video I did speculating about Rey's origins based on Rey's vision in The Force Awakens, check out the annotation link on the right. And if you want to see a video I did speculating about the eventual fate of Kylo Ren, check out the annotation on the left. Also be sure to subscribe, and thanks again for watching, everybody.